Hey, Cindy, we have a kind of a special thing that we're doing today, and we wanted to do a podcast because it was a lot to type into a blog, and we found out that people like video and audio better anyhow. Our promotion that we're doing, it starts next Friday or this coming Friday, the 17th, which is also St. Patrick's Day, is a super important day for K&K because 10 years ago, this Friday was the very first time that we all sat down. It was me, Cindy Kraft, Dee Cornetti, and Walter Kraft, which is Cindy's husband, and we discussed opening a company. And we discussed Cindy taking a big leap to come and do consulting and outsource services with Dee and I. And so that's always meant a lot to us. Our official 10-year anniversary is actually June 1st. That's when we signed the papers for the incorporation, and that was our leap off. But the decision was actually made on St. Patrick's Day and in Nashville, and there may or may not have been a few beverages on the table, right, Cindy?
Definitely by the end of that conversation, there were.
And those of you that have started a small business or maybe even started an agency, you know that decision is a huge decision for you and for your family. It's your livelihood, and deciding that you're going to do things on your own and rely on yourself to do things is a big choice. And so I'm really happy that Cindy made that decision to come along with us, and that this company has been as successful as it has been for the last 10 years. Cindy, did you have anything you wanted to add to why we're starting this promotion on the 17th and taking it through the 31st of May?
Well, we wanted to share some of our happiness at reaching a 10-year milestone with our customers, our current customers and potential customers. But we did want to explain because it seems kind of odd to start that on a Friday in the middle of the month. So now you understand the meaning behind it. Now we want to talk about the motivation. And that is the fact that now we're coming into the third month of Oasis E being real. And we're still kind of reeling from all of the education that went on at the end of 2022 to get everybody ready to go. And it's like, oh gosh, are we really going to talk about Oasis now? We want to help agencies focus their Oasis education. Yes, we had to do the whole Blitz thing at the end of 2022 to make sure we covered everything we needed to for Oasis E. But as we talked to agencies and talked to individuals in 2023, what shocked Sherry and I were the number of agencies that, yes, they did education for the office people. They did limited or no education for the clinicians because, quote, they didn't have time, or we were short staffed, or everybody is so busy. And so we're trying to like introduce little bits of education now that Oasis E is real and we're in 2023. I was stunned by that. I mean, I was really surprised the number of office people that had been now trained, but the actual data collectors had inconsistent or no information about what they needed to do, particularly with the new items, which drove us to say we want folks to be aware of a product that we've had now for about a year. And I refuse to call it a test because this is not a test. We're not interested in passing scores. We're not interested in giving people fancy letters after their names. What we're trying to do is weed out what clinicians know and what they may be struggling with when it comes to Oasis knowledge. Because the current model, Sherry, that bothers me is we're finding the errors by doing the review work. Whether the agencies are doing it internally or they utilize K&K for that, we are going in there and having to make corrections on real assessments and real documents and go back and forth with clinicians about making corrections. But the reality is very often the same error happens over and over and over again. So we keep making the correction and providing information to the clinician. But I think very often our review process has just kind of become passive in terms of it goes pretty well in my agency is what we hear, because the clinicians don't push back. They just agree to the changes. Oh, okay, but if they keep agreeing to the same changes, we're ending up in a cycle of insanity. So I don't think the corrections is really the best way necessarily. It's one piece of the puzzle to look at trends, but we want to be more proactive than that. So the Oasis Knowledge Assessment is available quarterly. But agencies can pick and choose if they want to do it just once or however many times. But we wanted to do an introductory promo and say, let's price this as low as we reasonably can. And for the time period, starting on the 17th of March, running through the quarter that the test is available, so through May 31st, make this as accessible as we can to any agency that wants to try this with their clinicians. What do I mean by try it? It's a 25 question knowledge assessment. It's available on demand online. All we need to get your clinicians access is an email address. The agency says this is when we're starting and this is how long I want them to have access to it. You get results in real time as staff complete that knowledge assessment. You see what their percentage of accuracy is. You see which ones they missed. When the testing cycle closes, we provide a detailed document with the rationale behind the correct responses. I don't think it's fair to write questions and then leave you hanging if a clinician wants to argue about it. Here's the rationale. Here's where it comes from the guidance manual or the Q&A. And we don't make them super convoluted, crazy questions of things that happen once in a million years in reality, but we do pick on pain points. We do look at what are the trending of errors in our review process. What are fairly recent Q&As that should be integrated at this point? What are some of those elements of older questions that we may have rounded those square corners a little bit and forgot some of that detail? And how do we make sure people understand that? Our view is that even if I got 90%, I want to know which one I didn't get correct so we can talk about this, and that we can understand organizationally by looking at the data at the end of a testing cycle. Is this an area that pretty much all the clinicians are struggling with? And so we want to do this as an educational thing across the board. Or am I seeing where one or two of my clinicians are struggling with this? And I don't need to bring everybody in. I don't need to put everybody in front of another webinar. These two or three or this handful subgroup, this is who we need to talk to remedy this. So it's really meant to be the tool, Sherry, that I used to in my previous lives before I joined this merry band of K&K. We talked about doing this kind of work, but it always came down to who's going to do it at the agency level, who's going to maintain it, who's going to score it, who's going to track it, who's going to do all this. And good intentions always ended up with, that's a good idea, but we just don't have the time. Or we'd make one and then keeping it up just became very labor intensive. We want to take that part off at K&K. So Sherry, I'm kind of long-winded on this one. Do you have anything to add about kind of what you've been seeing with OASIS Education follow-up in 2023?
Yeah, and Cindy, I'm just going to echo that the data collectors are your clinicians that go out to the home. They're the ones that see the situation in the house and have to choose the best answer. The better that they collect data, the less review on the back end, the less time and FTEs and hours that you're using on the review process is only going to improve your agency's process. I used the Scantron image when we started marketing this assessment because many of us remember the first time we took a Scantron test. And then there are others that are listening to this that have never taken a Scantron test and are looking at that thing going, what the heck are they putting on there? I want to be really clear that this is housed online. We collect that data, we send it out, you get a full report. We allow you to be able to focus your education and not waste time beating a dead horse on things that maybe your clinicians are doing well, maybe your review staff is doing well. And Cindy, can you talk briefly about how this could impact the review process?
Well, this sounds odd as a company that also does the review process. It decreases the work. It decreases the number of corrections. It decreases the time spent going back and forth about this needs to be changed because we know the clinician has to be involved. We still hear stories about agencies that, oh, it's just faster because our office person made all the corrections and then we just send it on. We know the clinician has to be part of that. Their name and their license is going on that document. But if we can get those errors down to as few as possible, and there's always an occasional one, there's human error. There's the reality that sometimes, the patient doesn't fit neatly into the response options that I've been given. But really trying to help us get to empowering the clinician. The clinician is the one who needs this information the most. And if anyone's listened to any of our OASIS training, they're probably sick and tired of me saying it, but the guidance manual was written for the clinician. That's who needs to know how to use it, how to be efficient and effective in data collection. But this idea that they can't figure it out, or you have to go to special classes and all this other stuff just hasn't worked out well. I mean, for the last 20 years, the fact that we're still seeing the biggest area of OASIS needing to be corrected is the functional assessment. Those questions are over 2 decades old and have very little change from when they originally started. So how can we still be in this cycle? So we see this as a tool to take it out of the review and hurry up. We got to get it turned around. They're already trying to go see another patient. Let's talk about, but the patient says they live alone. Let's just not. Let's look at scenario-based information. And then if we see an inconsistent response, let's talk about that and what you need to consider and learn from that so that going forward, we don't make those kinds of mistakes. And then if you have clinicians that participate that knock this thing out of the park, then putting them into educational events may not be necessary. So we're trying to just take that tool opportunity to give you specific information. And part of our special promo is a participating agency. When you have your staff go through this, when it's done, we're including a consulting time to talk about your results and what they mean and what you might want to consider. So we wanted to just kind of add a few things to it in honor of our 10-year anniversary, but we're very passionate, if you can't tell by the way I'm talking about it, about this tool helping agencies better focus. And Sherry, if I have a minute, I want to share just a brief example. In putting a recent test together, it was interesting because we know there was so much discussion with Oasis E about proxy and could you use a proxy and okay, the patient, if they're unable to answer, there are questions that allow me to pick, use the information from a family member or caregiver, or else I can go to the medical record. One of the things I was thinking about though is how well do the clinicians understand the proxy idea? So we've created a question that really pushes that issue about, can a clinician themselves be the proxy? So if I'm dealing with, let's say, the race question, can I just look at the patient? So the patient's unable to answer, so I put that, but I'm looking at them. So can't I pick an answer based on what I see? I thought that would be pretty clear that the clinician is not the proxy in any of these questions. And yet many clinicians picked the wrong answer, indicating that they can just choose the answer for the patient because they're looking at them. So I think there's also things we try to do with this knowledge assessment. Again, not making convoluted, goofy things, but trying to kind of push it a little bit to say, wait a minute, maybe we didn't really explain that completely. And so I've got clinicians out there thinking that they're a proxy too, so that they can pick answers when they really can't. So if that's what they think, then we need to make sure that they understand that that's not how this works. And then you see in recent Q&A said the same thing about proxy. So we want this to be an educational tool, not a pass fail situation, but how do we help people get to that next level of Oasis knowledge?
And I think it also would drive the clinicians to understand why they maybe have had to be going into the office for training when they were reluctant to. If they understand where their deficits are, I think that their ability to take in training is improved. So if you're interested in signing up your agency for the Oasis Knowledge Assessment, either for a quarterly or for longer than that, reach out to us at www.valuebeyondthevisit.com. Just hit the contact me button and it will email us and we will set up a call. And the reason I'm telling you that we need to set up a call is we need to make sure that we get you onboarded in a way that's not going to cause extra work for anyone in your office. And getting that information is seamless and we can make this as painless as possible, and then get those reports back to you so that you can use them to the betterment of your agency. And Cindy, I just wanted to say real quick, happy decision anniversary this Friday.
Right back at you.
Have a great day, everyone, and be safe.